Hello everybody, my name is Rainer and this is Rainier Books. Between all the videos that I make, that other booktubers make about books, about awards like the Women's Prize, like the International Booker, like the Booker Prize, the Scotiabank Giller, the National Book Award, we're reading all these awards, we're reading backlist books, we're reading books by, for example, some of my favorite authors like Jonathan Coe or now Mbolo Mbue. There's a lot of talk on television in Germany and even in other countries about AI, artificial intelligence, and the future of not only work but also culture, and how much artificial intelligence can change things. We already saw in these days, a couple of days ago, we saw a photo competition where professional photographers from all over the world participated in a contest, and the photo that won, actually the guy who won the prize, he gave the award back because he said, I didn't take the picture, that picture was made by artificial intelligence. So how are we able to distinguish between something that is really a product of a human being and the product of artificial intelligence? So what I did today for this video, I want to start a little debate here on BookTube. I asked ChatGPT, which is one of the most popular tools right now on artificial intelligence on the web, to write me 3 short pieces of literature. And I want to read these pieces to you and know what you think. So I asked AI, first ChatGPT, I asked it to please write me a short piece of prose in the style of Ernest Hemingway, and please set it in the city of San Francisco. And ChatGPT came up with this story. The fog was thick, obscuring the tops of the buildings and shrouding the city in a damp, gray mist. The man stood at the foot of the Golden Gate Bridge, his hands in his pockets, and watched as the cars passed by on the road above. He had come here often over the past few weeks, drawn to the bridge like a moth to a flame. He didn't know why exactly. Maybe it was the way the steel cables seemed to stretch into infinity, disappearing into the fog. Maybe it was the sound of the water far below, crashing against the rocks. Or maybe it was simply the sense of being alone, surrounded by nothing but the fog and the sound of his own thoughts. He had thought about jumping, of course. Who hadn't, standing on this bridge? But it wasn't really about that, he realized. It was about the feeling of being on the edge, of being suspended between life and death, of feeling alive in a way he hadn't in years. He heard a voice behind him and turned to see a woman walking toward him. She was wearing a bright yellow raincoat and carrying a camera. "Excuse me," she said. "I hope I'm not bothering you. I just wanted to take a picture of the bridge in this fog. It's so beautiful, don't you think?" He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. She took a few pictures, then turned to him again. "Are you okay?" she asked. He shrugged. "I'm fine." She looked at him for a moment and smiled. "Well, I hope you have a good day," she said, and walked away. He watched her go, then turned back to the bridge. He knew he would come back here again. Maybe tomorrow or the next day. But for now, he turned and walked away, back into the city, feeling like he had been given a reprieve, like he had been given a second chance. That's the first example of AI writing a piece of prose. The second example, I asked AI to write something in the style of William Faulkner. Here it goes. The old house. The old house stood on the edge of town, its paint peeling and its shutters hanging askew. No one had lived there for years, not since the family that owned it had died or moved away. No one knew for sure. But there was something about the house that drew people to it, something mysterious and alluring. Some said that it was haunted, that strange things happened there at night. Others said that it was cursed, that anyone who entered its walls would be doomed to suffer some terrible fate. One day, a young man named Jack decided to explore the old house. He had always been fascinated by the stories he had heard about it and wanted to see for himself what was inside. He pushed open the front door, which creaked on its hinges, and stepped inside. The air was stale and musty, and he could feel the weight of the house's history pressing down on him. He wandered from room to room, his footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. The furniture was old and covered in dust, and the wallpaper was peeling in places. But there was something else in the house, something that he couldn't quite put his finger on. As he reached the top of the stairs, he heard a sound coming from one of the rooms. It was a faint scratching noise, like something trying to claw its way out of a trap. He approached the room slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. The door was closed, and he could feel the cold draft seeping through the cracks in the wood. With a trembling hand, he pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room was empty except for a small wooden chest in the corner. He walked over to the chest and lifted the lid. Inside, he found a stack of old letters tied up with a ribbon. The handwriting was faded and difficult to read, but as he began to read the letters, he realized that they were from the family that once lived in the house. As he read, he began to feel a connection to the people who had lived there so many years ago. He could almost see them moving through the rooms, hear the sound of their laughter and the rustle of their clothing. And then he heard the sound again, the scratching noise, louder this time. He turned around, but there was no one there, nothing in the room except for him and the old chest. He realized then that the house was not haunted or cursed, but that it was simply filled with the memories and the stories of those who had lived there before. And as he left the old house and stepped back into the bright sunlight, he knew that he would never forget the stories he had discovered there, the stories of the people who had once called that old house their home. And finally, give me a third shot, please. This is a story that I asked ChatGPT to write, a little story about Nigerian immigrants. I wanted to have an immigration story to the United States. Nigerian immigrants coming to Seattle, Washington. Here's the story, A New Beginning. Took ChatGPT about a minute to write this. Chinwe and Chike had only been in Seattle for a few weeks, but already they felt lost in the hustle and bustle of the city. They had come to America from Nigeria, hoping for a better life, but the reality was much harder than they had anticipated. Chinwe worked as a cleaner at a local hospital, while Chike drove a taxi. They barely made enough money to pay the rent on their small apartment and put food on the table. But they were determined to make a new life for themselves in America, and they were grateful for the opportunity to be here. They had left Nigeria behind with all its problems and challenges and had come to this new land with hope in their hearts and determination in their souls. One day, as they were walking through the city, they saw a sign in a store window that caught their eye. It read, "Nigerian Community Gathering, Saturday night." Chinwe and Chike exchanged a look and then made their way into the store. They asked the owner about the gathering, and he told them that it was a chance for Nigerians in Seattle to come together, share their stories, and support each other. They decided to go, and on Saturday night, they made their way to the gathering. The room was filled with people all dressed in colorful clothes and speaking in their native tongues. There was music and dancing, and the smell of Nigerian food wafted through the air. Chinwe and Chike felt at home for the first time since they had arrived in America. They met other Nigerians who had come to Seattle to make a new life for themselves, and they shared their own stories of struggle and hope. As the night wore on, they realized that they were not alone. They had a community of people who understood what they had been through and who were there to support them. As they left the gathering and walked back to their apartment, hand in hand, they felt a renewed sense of purpose. They knew that their journey in America would not be easy, but they also knew that they were not alone. They had each other, and they had the support of their fellow Nigerians. They were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead and to build a new life in this land of opportunity. This last story actually sounds very cliche-ish, very stereotypical, and I really don't like it. But think about it. If you are working in a school as a teacher and you have a 14, 15, 16-year-old student who comes to you and says that he or she has written this story, you would actually like it. And this also could be like the beginning, the sort of core of a novel, to that sort of ChatGPT created within 60 seconds. You can create a plot script, I'm sure, about you can use to make a short story of or a novel of by using ChatGPT. Isn't that strange? Isn't that weird? And where are we about to go? When will we see the first novel nominated for the Booker Prize that has been written by ChatGPT or another of these artificial intelligence tools and machines and brains, you know? When will we have the first time, or is it, what would you think? Should it be possible that a novel written by ChatGPT or some other tool could enter a Booker Prize if it was published in the UK between ba 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 and ba ba ba? What do you think about it? And will we be able to determine if something is written by a person or not? The question of artificial intelligence is a very interesting and a great question for the next future, for the next years to come. I hear that every few months artificial intelligence takes a giant step. It's possible to clone voices with tools like 11 Labs. And I'm actually going to try something for one of my next videos with 11 Labs. And that will be a surprise for you, hopefully. But what do you think about AI creating prose or poems? Poems would be actually the next thing that we'll try out. But please drop it in the comments down below what you think, what you're scared of, and what you hope for with artificial intelligence and booktube and literature. Thanks for this, and thanks for listening. Bye.